Hi, good morning, all of you. So today we are learning a new chapter, and the name of the chapter is standard costing. So in this chapter, we will learn, we have already learned about the standard costing in our basic classes. Like in CA India, we have done standard costing. Now we are learning about standard costing again. So what is the difference, ma'am? What new we are learning here in standard costing? See, whatever we have learned in our basic classes, like in CA Inter, it was all basic. Standard costing means variance analysis. So standard costing means variance analysis, and whatever we have studied in our basic classes, that was very basic kind of analysis. But now what do we have here right now is advanced analysis. All right, it is an advanced technique of variance analysis. So if you will see, these are the topic which we will cover today. First is what? Planning and operational variance. This is the first topic. All right, second one is variance analysis in case of activity-based costing. So these are, you can see, these are variance analysis, but these are advanced variance analysis. These are advanced variance analysis, right? So here we will learn about the variance analysis in activity-based costing. Then we will see how variance analysis happens in case of learning curve, right? Then we will learn in case of relevant costing, how this variance analysis will happen. Then in case of throughput accounting, we will learn that how this variance analysis happen. You can see that these are not the basic thing which we have learned. But yes, before understanding this, we must know the basic thing. I'll give you a quick revision of everything what we have learned in our basic classes. And then we will come back here to understand that what is actually happening here also. So I will give you a basic idea of what we have learned in our basic classes. All right. Okay. So the point is that if you remember in our basic classes, we have done variance analysis of cost sales. Just give me 1 minute. I'm just trying to help you. So I know it is not that much relevant, but you must need to understand the basics. Then you can understand these topic. So the point is that if you remember here what is happening? We are doing variance analysis. Right? We are doing variance analysis. Now, variances or variations. Where are we studying this variations? Where are we studying this variations? This is the question. Where are we studying these variations? All right. So the point is that we have the cost and we have the sales. Right? We have the cost, we have the sales, right? And in cost, we have different type of costs, like we have direct material cost, we have labor cost, direct labor cost, then we have variable overheads, and we have fixed overheads. These are all cost of the company. And then we have the sale. Sale means what? How many number of units we are selling, and at what price, selling price per unit, at what price we are selling these units. So the point is that we will find the variation everywhere. We want to find out the variation in cost. How much variation in cost is arising because of the units or because of the price of the material. How the cost is arising because of the labor, number of labor, and because of the rate amount which we are paying to them. Similarly, in case of variable overheads and fixed overhead, we try to find out the variations in cost. What is the standard cost or estimated cost we want to achieve, and what is the actual cost we are attaining? This will give you the variations. And here we are learning about the variations, right? We are learning about the variations. So here we are learning about the variations. Similarly, we want to know about the variations in how many units we are selling and at what price we are selling. So here we are finding the variation between the standard or estimated. Standards or estimations we have already set. Right? The estimations we have already said, and what reality we have achieved. Matlab, what is the actual scenario? All right. We will see what is the actual scenario. So we have the standards, then we have the actual reality, and then we will see the whether we are achieving what we have set the standards or not. If we have set a standard ki, okay, this much of units we want to sell, so we want to check whether we are selling those units or not. If we have a standard, this much of quantity of material, this much should be the quantity of material which we will use for the production. Are we using the same quantity of material or not? So the point is that here we want to know the variations. But these are the basic things which you have already learned in your basic classes. And now we are learning the advanced variations. So now, since we are in CA final, you need to know about all these things for a reason, because in some question they may ask you about the material variations. We have some questions where they may ask you the usage, material usage variance in combination in the question. But now we are learning about what advanced variations. This is the new topic which we are learning. What is it? Advanced variations. Right? We are learning what advanced variations. So what are the advanced variation? You can see here the first topic is given to us is planning variations or variances. Planning, variance. And the second topic is related to operational variance. The first topic was related to planning variance, and the second topic was related to what? Operational variance. Now, the point is that we will calculate this planning variation and operational variation for everything. Everything ka matlab, we will find this planning and operational variance for the raw material. Right? We will find it for the raw material. Then we will find these variation for labor. We will find these variation for labor. Then we will find these variations for variable overheads, fixed overheads. We will find it for variable overheads and fixed overhead. So the point is that we will find these variations for everything, right? So we will find these planning variations and operational variation for everything. Now the question comes here, okay, so if we find the planning and operational variation for everything, then the question comes here, what? So now the question comes here, what is this planning and operational variation? See, the point is that this planning and operational variation will give you traditional variations, right? When we will study about these planning and operational variation, if we combine them, it will be what? Traditional variations. So we will see the planning variation and operational variations. Let's try to understand the topic of planning variations and operational variations. All right. Just give me 1 minute. Just give me 1-2 minutes. I'll be back. So we have learned that now in standard costing, we are learning about advanced variations. So we will learn these advanced variation everywhere. We will learn these advanced variation everywhere, like for material, for labor, for variable overhead, for fixed overhead. We will learn these advanced variation everywhere. So if you will see here, we have taken two type of these advanced variation. One is planning variation and another one is operational variations. Now the question comes here, ma'am, what is this planning variations? And ma'am, what is this operational variations? All right, this is the question now. See, just remember, these are the advanced variations which we are studying. We have already studied the basic variations like variation in material, labor, overheads, sales variation. We have already studied those variations, but this is advanced variations. All right, now if you will see, planning variation and operational variation is actually related to these things. What is it? If you will see, planning variation is what? Original budget frame, right? Original budget means original standard quantity framed, or original labor hour, labor efficiency, labor usage, whatever. So what is the original budget framed? Then you will see what was the revised budget here. Then you will see what is the actual result. So the point is that the difference or the variation here, this variation, the difference between or the variation in original budget and revised budget is a planning variation. And the variation in what revised budget and actual result is what operational variation. Right? This is operational variations. Now the question comes, just remember, this planning variation means what? When there is some problem in planning. Who does this planning in the company? If you will see, planning is actually done by the senior level management. Like you can see the CEO or the CFO or the managing director, the senior most level people, they plan the budget of the company. They do all these things for the company. They plan the budget of the company. Now the question is that if there is any fault in planning, variation will arise. So who is responsible for these variation? The senior level management is responsible for these variation. If there is any fault in planning, the planning was not good. For any reason, if the planning was not good, then the variation will arise here, will be known as planning variations. So just remember that this variation, who is responsible for these variation? For the planning variation, company ka the topmost level management, right? The topmost level management. So who is the topmost level management? CEO, CFO, or MD? The top level, strategic level management. We also called it strategic, where these people make the strategy of the company. So the strategic level management, right? Strategic level management is responsible for these variations. All right. Now the point is that, okay, ma'am, then what is operational variation? So this variation arises due to business operation, how you are operating, how you are working in the organization. So if you will see, operational variation is actually a variation between the actual result and the revised budget. So this is what an estimation you have set and what actual reality you are getting will all result in operational variation. So if you will see, like all the basic variation which you have studied, like material variation, labor variation, all the basic variations which you have learned, right? That was all related to operational variations, where we were keeping the responsibility of the production manager, purchase department. So where we were keeping these people responsible for different activity of the company. That was all your what? Operational level management. So these people were responsible. So here for operational variation, the operational level managers are responsible, like production manager, purchase manager. So lower level management, the lower level, the line management people are responsible. Okay? So line management. are responsible for all these variations. The lower level management is responsible for all these variations. All right. So this is our operational variations, and this is our operational variation and planning variation. Just keep remember it in mind. Planning variation means original budget and the revised budget is your planning variations. And what is your operational variation? It is your revised budget minus actual budget. Give me 1 minute. I'll just try to explain you something new. So the point is that if you will see here, what we have learned, we have just learned that planning variation, who is responsible, the top level management is responsible for the planning variations. All right. So planning variations, right? So who is responsible? The top level management. Actually, the strategic level management, they approve the budget. We have learned in last session, either the budget will be set by the strategic level management or lower level management, or both, they together set the budget. So actually, whatever the budget the company prepare, it will be approved by the strategic level managers. सबसे ऊपर वाला budget approve करता है, right? So whatever the budget they have set, original budget they have set. Now here the point is that they consider while they prepare the original budget, or if they revise the budget, why they revise the budget? For a reason. Budget क्यों revise होता है? Maybe the external environment has changed. I told you in last session, you remember? I told you because of G20 in Delhi, you can see the effect in market. Yesterday, the Nifty was around 20,000. I told you, you can see the market. It will impact the market. So the point is that business organization, they always affected by the market. They always affected by the external environment. So the point is that when the strategic level management, they prepare the budget, they consider everything. They consider the internal environment and they consider the external environment. And external environment will include everything. They include the political environment, economical environment. They consider the social environment, technology changes, legal environment. So they consider everything and then they frame the budgets, right? Sometimes they revise the budget if any internal or external environment changes. If there is any changes in external environment and internal environment, you can imagine that setting this budget, revising these budget is not an easy task. I told you in last session, when these days, when the budget we prepare, we need intelligent brain, right? We do not trust the accountant, basic accountant. We don't trust them because the point is that they have limited knowledge. And for these budget, we need intelligent people. I told you in last session, if you remember, I told you that we need intelligent people for setting these budgets. I told you in last session that for these budget, we need intelligent people. So if you can see here, planning variation, this is what planning variation. So what is happening here? It is all done by the intelligent strategic level managers. This is all done by the strategic level manager, right? Strategic level manager, they prepare these budgets. Okay, they prepare the original budget, then they revise the budget, and if there is any variations, what will happen? If there will be any variation, what will happen? We will find those variation, but who is responsible for these? Strategic level management. So this is what planning variations. Now the question comes, if this is planning variation, madam, then what is operational variation then? If this is planning variation, what is operational variation? Now the point is that this is something done by the basic, this is done by the strategic level manager. Now what happened? So what is revised budget? The final budget which should be accepted by the people in the organization. So if there is any variation between what the revised budget, right? And the actual reality, है ना, actual. So this is what estimations, but revised estimations set up by the senior management. The senior level management, the higher authorities or the strategic level manager, they prepare this budget. है ना, budget we have learned in last session. They prepare the budget, they prepare the actual budget, they consider the external environment, and they may revise the budget. So there will be a budget, then there will be actual scenario, and there may be some variations. Right, there will be some variations. So this variation is known as operational level variations. Who is responsible? Who is responsible to control these variations? The operational level managers are responsible to control these variations. All right, operational level managers are responsible to control these variations. So this is operational level variations. All right, you can see here we have this point that planning variation arises. This variation arises because there is any fault in planning by the CEO. CEO ने strategic level पे कुछ गलती कर दी, तो ये variation आएगा, right? So this variation will arise if there is any faulty standard और inaccurate planning. Planning में कुछ गलती हो गई, कौन करेगा? Strategic level manager. So if there is any fault in planning, ठीक है, so who is responsible? Strategic level manager is responsible for this. All right, then operational variation. So here what is happening? Operational performance में कुछ गलती कर दी, line manager, lower level manager ये गलती करेंगे. So that will be what that will be operational variation. That will be your operational variations, right? So we have these two concepts of strategic level management and operational level management. Okay, next. So again, if you will see, these points are written in your material, in your learning material. So what is it? So we have just learned operational level managers are responsible for operational level variations, right? And strategic level managers are responsible for planning variations, right? Operational level managers are not responsible for planning variations, right? And operational variation will arise due to the factor almost or entirely within the control of the management. And strategic level management variation arises because of the external environment, the changes in external environment, and generally it is not controllable. So I just told you here, if you remember, we have just discussed that यहाँ पे ये जो variation आ रहा है ना, planning variation. So we have just discussed that variation here arising as a planning variation. यहाँ पे variation क्यों आ रहा है? क्योंकि या तो internal environment change हुआ है, वो तो control कर सकते हैं. अगर हमारे within the organization, if there is any changes, we can fix that. अगर अंदर कुछ change हो रहा है, we can fix that. But अगर कुछ बाहर change हो रहा है, we cannot fix it. है ना? So if there is problem within the organization, we can fix that. But if there is problem, anything which is outside the organization, we cannot fix that. COVID आ गया, we cannot fix that. कोई भी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन उसे फिक्स नहीं कर सकती थी, राइट? कोई इंटरनेशनल लेवल पे कोई प्रॉब्लम हो गई या कोई इवेंट हो गया, you cannot fix that. It is beyond control. It is beyond the control of the senior management as well. So the point is that generally the planning variation arises because of the external environment, which is beyond control. Right? And variation आएगा ही आएगा, and it is not possible to control it. It is beyond control. This variation is beyond control. But if you will see, operational level variation arises, this variation. This operational level variation arises because of only the internal environment. Something within the organization. This variation arises because of something within the organization. So this is within the control. इसको control किया जा सकता है. If you have a good planning in the organization, this can be controlled. right? So the point is that keep it in mind, we have two variation: planning level variation, operational level variation. Planning level variation cannot be controlled. It is not within the control of the company, right? It is because of the external environment. We cannot control the external environment. Planning level variation. But operational level variation, it arises because of internal environment. And it is within the control of the company. Company, if they use good strategies, they can control it. If the company uses good business strategies, they can control it. Simple. All right. So this is your operational variations and planning variations. All right. So you can see I've taken this picture also for you, that for planning level, variation, who is responsible? The top management is responsible. Strategic or planning level managers are responsible because they actually frame the strategy of the company. So those level manager is responsible, and they consider both internal environment only arises because of the internal environment. This arises because of the internal environment, which is within the control of the company. अरे अंदर क्या हो रहा है हमें पता है ना, अंदर क्या हो रहा है वो तो कंट्रोल किया जा सकता है ना. So within the environment, if there is something which is affecting the organization and the reason is within the in organization, we can control it. We can control it, right? And the sum of planning variation and operational variation is known as traditional variations, right? ठीक है. So you can see here planning variation के बारे में, you can see often deemed to be uncontrollable. Control नहीं किया जा सकता because it is generally affected by the external environment, and an external environment is beyond the control. ठीक है. And this operational variation, it arises because of the internal environment, and you can control the internal environment. So it is possible to control these variation. It is deemed controllable, but it is not controllable. So these are the variation, and you can see these are advanced level variations. You have never heard about these variation in your basic classes, है ना? In your CA inter you have never heard about it. अच्छा, मतलब टॉप लेवल पे भी वेरिएशंस आ सकते हैं. यस, है ना? टॉप लेवल मैनेजमेंट में भी वेरिएशन आ सकते हैं बिकॉज ऑफ द प्लानिंग चेंज हो सकती है. व्हाई? बिकॉज इफ द एक्सटर्नल एनवायरनमेंट चेंजेस, इफ द न्यू टेक्नोलॉजी इज कमिंग एंड इट इज affecting the people, like these days you can see artificial intelligence is affecting the organization, right? And when there was a 4G revolution, it was affecting the people. Everyone, every people, every organization was switching to 4G. Point is that if there is any technological changes, it will impact the people, and we have to consider it. All right, it will impact the people, and we have to consider it. Okay. So this is what planning variation, operational variations. Now we have a question on this topic. You can see. So I told you that we calculate these planning variations and we calculate these operational variation for everything. We calculate it for material, we calculate it for labor, for everything, right? So you can see these are the information for the raw material. What are the information you have here? For the raw material, how much original standard, how much kg of raw material, standard kg of raw material is required. Then how much revised standard kg of raw material is required, and how much actual raw material, how much kg of actual raw material is consumed here for the final goods. At what price these raw material, original price, then revised price, then the actual price is there. So we have all these things. Now let's see that how we can find the planning variations here. See how we can calculate the planning variations here and operational variations here. See how we can calculate the planning variation and operational variations here. So I told you that we calculate everything. Like in planning variation, you can calculate the usage variance and price variation both. Huh? So material planning usage variance. Material planning usage variance. Now, what is usage variance? It is also known as quantity variation. Huh? And planning variation means revised budget minus actual budget. Or you can say actual budget minus revised budget. Okay. So when you are calculating this material planning quantity or usage variance, you will see what was the actual quantity. Then you will see what was the revised quantity for the actual output into the standard price. So this will give you what material planning usage variance. Similarly, you can find here material planning price variations. All right. So what will be the standard price minus, this will be actual budgeted standard price, actual budgeted standard price minus what? Revised budgeted standard price minus the actual. This will be price variations, price variation. This will be price variation. Then what do we have to see? The total variations. Material ka, we will solve this question after this. Planning total variance. Right? So we will see how we can calculate all these things. Right? We will see that how we can calculate all these information. Right? Okay. So planning variation. Let's do the question of planning variation and let's see what is it coming. And then we will find the value for operational variations also. Okay. So if you will see the information, you can see what is here, what is your actual quantity budgeted and what was the revised quantity budgeted. So you can see here, you can see they have given you the information. You can see here, they have given you the information about the actual quantity and revised quantity. Actual quantity, this is what? Actual quantity in actual budget. Actual budget. And this is revised standard quantity of budget. This is what? Revised standard quantity from the revised budget. So you can see this was your original budget, this was your revised budget. It was all done by the strategic level manager. तो देखो ओरिजिनल बजट में उन्होंने बोला कि हमें इतनी क्वांटिटी ऑफ रॉ मटेरियल चाहिए, उन्होंने बोला हमें इतना रॉ मटेरियल चाहिए था प्रोडक्शन के, ओरिजिनल बजट इनटू 2, राइट? This much kg of raw material was actually set by them. Then they revised it and they said, okay, 4,500 into 2.25. This was their revised budget. Unhone senior management revised their budget. First they said, okay, we need this much quantity of raw material for the production of final good. Then they revised their own budget and they said, no, we don't need this much quantity of material. Instead of this quantity of material, we need this much quantity of raw material. So they revised their own budget. Then actual quantity, how much actual quantity is consumed here. Then they are watching, sorry, not this one, a standard price. Then their standard price. Okay. Now just solve it and tell me what is the answer coming. Tell me the answer. Solve this and tell me what answer is coming. Quickly tell me the answer is coming here. What answer is coming here? Yes. Solve it and tell me what answer is coming here. What is the answer coming here? Quickly solve it and tell me. Or if you want, I can use my calculator. I don't need it. So this will be 9 minus calculator. You can solve it. So this is what 4500 into 2.25. 2.25. This is coming as 10125 kg of raw material. Right? Solve it. Tell me what is it coming. Yes. Quickly tell me what is it coming. Yes. What is it coming? So this is coming as, if I'll solve it, I'll get 14062. This will be 14062.5. This is what? An adverse variation. This is what? An adverse variation. This is coming as your planning variation, not good. Why not good? क्योंकि पहले बोल रहे हो कम quantity लगेगा, बाद में बोल रहे हो ज्यादा लगेगा. This is not good. Right? So for that reason, I can say it is unfavorable variations, right? So this is not a good variation. It's an unfavorable variation because initially you were saying that you need less raw material and then later you are saying, no, we need more raw material. So this is not a favorable variation. It's not a good variation, right? Okay. So this is what material planning quantity variation or usage variance, right? Now let's see what is the price variations. Let's see what is the price variations, right? Okay. So what was your standard price? Your standard price, original price was 12.5. So the original price was rupees 12.5. Then what was the revised price? It was around 11.5. And the actual budgeted quantity was this, 9,000. Now, from this, you can calculate the price variation. Again, पहले आप बोल रहे थे ज़्यादा price है, बाद में कम का मिल गया. So this is a favorable variation. Right? It is a good variation because initially you were saying that raw material will be expensive. Later on, raw material was cheap. Right? So it's a favorable variations. 2.5 minus 11.5. All right. Okay. So this will be 9,000. This is 9,000 favorable. And it was 1450 adverse. Now, how will we find the total variation? Total variation is the sum of these two variations. So just add these two variations. Sum of what? Material planning usage variation plus material planning price variation. Add them. You will get the total variation. Material planning total variation. So what is the total variation coming here? What is the total variation coming here? You can see, just add these two values. So one of my material planning usage variation is coming as 14062.5. It is adverse. plus 9,000 favorable. So one is adverse and one is favorable. This is adverse and this is favorable. You can calculate. Five zero six two adverse. This is what adverse variation, and the amount will be 5062 adverse variation, right? So this is what coming here, and you can decide this is favorable or unfavorable. Is it good or bad or what? You can easily decide it, right? Okay, so this is my planning variation. You can see I have calculated here the planning variation for the quantity, and we have calculated the planning variation for everything, right? Now let's calculate the operational variation here. We have calculated the planning variations. Now let's calculate the operational variations also. All right. Okay. From the same information, let's calculate the operational variations, right? So what is happening here? I'm just removing all these information so that we can calculate the operational variations. So let's calculate the operational variation. What is operational variation? We find it for quantity and we find it for quantity as well as we find it for price. Okay. So now we are calculating operational variations. Right? Now what is happening? We are calculating the operational variations, right? We are calculating the operational variation and we find it for both. We will find it for quantity and we will find it for the price also. Huh? So if you will see for the operational variation, we consider what these two information. We consider the revised standard quantity and then we consider what is the actual scenario the company is having. So operational variation means the revised budget, right? Revised budget minus the actual scenario. This is what, this is your, this will give you what? This will give you operational variations, right? Now the point is that we will find these operational variation for everything. We will find it we will find it for everything. We will find it for usage variance. We will find it for the price variation. We will find it for everything. All right. We will find it for everything. Okay. So we will find it for quantity. Operational material quantity operational variation. We will call it like this. Material quantity or usage operational variation. Right? Material quantity operational variation. We will find it in this way. All right. Okay. Now to find it, what we have to do, we have to see what was your revised quantity, because we are finding the quantity, right? So what was your revised quantity for the actual finding? You will see revised quantity of raw material output. And then you will see, okay, this is the revised quantity. Then you will see what is the actual quantity. You will see the actual quantity. You will see the actual quantity of raw material for actual output. right? You will see the actual quantity of raw material for actual output. Now, the point is that what is the revised quantity of raw material? You can see the revised quantity of raw material is what? This. This is the revised quantity of raw material. What is it? 45 into 2.25. This is what revised quantity of raw material for the actual output. Minus actual quantity kitni hai? This is actual quantity. 8750. This is the actual quantity into what? The standard price, which will be rupees 11. Right. If you will solve it, you will get material quantity operational variation. Okay. After this, if they will ask you to calculate the material price operational variations. So you can find the material price operational variations. You can solve it. Next is what? Price operational variation. Right? So what we will consider to find it? We will consider the revised standard price. Revised standard price of the raw material. Then we will see what is the actual standard price, actual price of the material. What is the actual price of the material? And then we will see what is the actual quantity. See, this is the most important topic. You will see most of the question on this topic. You will see most of the question on this topic. Okay, actual quantity. Actual quantity. So you can see revised standard price is what? Revised standard price was 11.5. What is the actual price? 13. Oh. Revised standard price was 11.5. This was your 11.5. Rupees 11.5. And what is the actual price? It was rupees 13. Then what will happen? What is the actual quantity? Actual quantity will be 8750. This is the actual quantity. So 8750 kg. Just solve it, you will get the answer. Just solve it, you will get the answer. So 15812.5. This is my answer coming. So you can see this is actually a favorable variation. This is what it is, actually a favorable variation. Why it's a favorable variation? Because you can see actually they are consuming less raw material than the standard they have set. Actually, they are consuming less raw material than the standard they have set. For that reason, it's a favorable variation. All right, you can see it's a favorable variation. It's a favorable variation. Okay, next let's see the price operational variation. So this is unfavorable because you were expected to buy the raw material at this price, but you purchase very expensive raw material. So since you are purchasing very expensive raw material, it is not good. It is unfavorable, right? So let's see what is it coming. You can see unfavorable, 13125, unfavorable. Now with this, you can find the total variation also, total traditional operational variation. Traditional operational variation is a sum of these two variations, right? Traditional operational variation, right? This will be actually the sum of these two variation, quantity variation and price variation. So quantity variation is coming as 15812.5 favorable, right? And 13125 unfavorable. Okay. Unfavorable. So just consider these two values, you will get the answer. This is what? 2687 favorable. So you can see we have calculated the planning variation and operational variation for everything. Whatever the variations you have studied so far in your basic classes, just remember. Here we are learning advanced variation, matlab more in detail. You are studying those variations. Whatever you have already studied, you are studying all those variation again, but more in detail. More in detail. More in detail ka bole to give me 1 minute. I need a space to write. So what we are learning. So if you will see, you have already learned about the material variations. In case of material cost variation, you have learned it, right? And in material cost variation, you know it is equal to material quantity variation plus material price variation. You know this, right? And you know that material quantity variation is equal to material mix variation and material yield variation. We have already studied everything. But now what is happening? We will study all these variation in further more in detail. More in detail bole to ye wala variation we will study at operational variation and planning variation. Ye wala bhi we will study in operational variation and planning variation. And then this one also operational variation and planning variation. This one will be operational and planning variation. This wala bhi operational and planning variation. You can see more in detail. Tabhi we are calling it advanced variation. So the point is that we have already studied these variation, but now what is happening? We are studying these variation again, but more in detail. We are learning it more in detail, right? More in detail ka matlab, because earlier we have already studied for material price variation, only the purchase manager is responsible. We have studied that for this material price variation, only the purchase manager is responsible. We have studied that the quantity variation, only the production manager is responsible. But now what we are studying? It is not just the production manager have the responsibility, but the strategic level manager is also responsible. Now we are studying that it is not just the purchase manager who is responsible, but it is the strategic level manager also, right, who is responsible for it. So the point is that now we are saying that, see, the responsibility has increased. Now what is happening? The responsibility of the managers are increasing, right? We're studying more in detail. Okay, dekho, it is not just the operational level manager, but the senior manager also set actually he approved all the budgets, right? So he's responsible for everything. Now we will study what was the fault in planning and what was the fault in operation, what variation arising because of the fault in planning, what variation arising because of the way we are operating, right? So what is happening here? We want to know the variation of both. We want to know the variation of both, right? The responsibility of both the line management responsibility as well as the strategic level management responsibility. We want to know the responsibility of both the managers, right? So for that reason, we are learning it in this form. And the point is that it is not just the material cost variation. We do the same thing for the labor also. So if you will see, because the strategic level manager is responsible for everything, they approved it, right? So if you study about the labor cost variation, in case of labor cost variation, we study about the labor efficiency variation, right? And we study about the labor rate variation. Right? And in case of labor efficiency variation, we study about two things. Here we study about the labor mix variations and yield variation. Now, again, what is happening? We will not just study the cost variation. We will not just study the efficiency variation. We will not study the this rate variation. See, who is responsible? We were saying efficiency production manager was responsible. Production manager. And for labor rate variation, who was responsible? You were saying HR team is responsible, right? So the point is that here we were just keeping the responsibility of the operational level managers or the line managers. But now we are saying only these people are not responsible, but both the manager, planning level management is responsible as well as operational level manager is responsible. Matlab strategic level, top level management is responsible. Also, the lower level manager is responsible. We will study what is the variation arising because of the fault in planning. What is the variation arising because of the fault in operation. So we will study these variation everywhere. Here also we will study these two variation, right? Labor rate variations, we will study this variation arising because of fault in planning and fault in operation. Then we will study this variation arising because of the fault in planning and fault in operation. Then we will study this variation fault in planning and fault in operation. Then this variation fault in planning and operation. So we will study this variation more in detail, you can see. Because it is not just the operational level manager, but the strategic level manager is also responsible. So we want to know how much they are responsible, what are their responsibility. We will study it more in detail. All right. I hope it is clear, right? You can see we have so many questions on this topic. ठीक है? All right, you can see we have so many questions on this. Traditional variation is actually the sum of planning variation and operational variation. We have just studied this. That traditional variation, matlab traditionally you have studied everything, na? Abhi tak you know everything, right? You know material variation, you know labor variation, you know variable overhead variation, you know fixed overhead variation, you know about everything. मतलब you know every traditional variation. अब इसको और घुस के analyze कर रहे हैं और detail में analyze कर रहे हैं. So what is happening now? For every variation, we want to know more about it. What is the fault in planning? What is the fault in operation? Because both the level of manager are responsible. The strategic level manager have the responsibility as well as the operational level manager also have the responsibility. Both the managers are responsible. We will see the extent of the responsibility, but both the level of managers are responsible for it. All right, you can see. So these are all the formula we have. You can see they have calculated the planning and operational variation for material. Then they have calculated the planning and operational variation for the labor also. Right? Then they have done the same for the labor, material, and variable overhead, fixed overhead. They can do it for everything, right? So you can see it is for everything. Now let's do one thing. If you want, we can take some questions. Then let's do one thing. Let's take this question. So we have a question just in front of you. You have a question. Let's try to solve it. Now you have to do it at your own. Keep it in mind. Just keep it in mind. What is your planning variation and what is your operational variation, right? Keep it in mind. Keep it in mind. What is your planning variation and what is your operational variation? The sum of these two variation will be traditional variation. Keep it in mind. So what is your planning variation? You know, planning variation means the difference in what the original budget, originally what you have set, and the revised budget. This is all budget, right? Estimation, the original budget and the revised budget. This will give you planning variation. And what is the operational variation? This will be the revised budget and the actual scenario, right? Revised budget and the actual scenario will be operational budget. So you can now see this information for everything. You can take the material quantity, you can take the price, and you can calculate everything. So let's see what they are asking you to calculate here. So first they're asking you to find the traditional variations. So traditional is actually the sum of these two variations. Traditional is actually the sum of these two variations. So you can see what will be my traditional variation. If I add these two value now, if I add these two value, you can see what will happen. These two value will cancel each other. And the formula for traditional variation, let me write the formula for traditional variation also. Let me write the formula for traditional variation. So the formula for traditional variation is what? Original budget. We consider the original budget minus the actual reality. Right? So this is what? This is the formula for traditional variations. So if in the question they're asking you, what is the traditional variation? Original budget, original standards. What are the standards we have set? You can see generally, if you remember, we consider it now that what is the standard material, standard quantity of material, standard labor hours, standard whatever, standard and actual. We consider the standard and actual. Between standard and actual, now we have introduced one more thing which is known as revised budget, right? Revised. And why the budget is revised here? Because of the planning. So traditionally, this is something which we have already done. Whatever the variation you have studied so far, in your CA intern, material variation, quantity variation, usage variations, price variation, labor variation, whatever you have studied, that was all related to your traditional variation. So now what is the planning variation? In case of planning variation and operational, you are further dividing it into planning and operational variation ताकि इसको और डिटेल में पता कर सके. हम बोल रहे हैं कि यहाँ पे ये जो वेरिएशन आ रहा है, it is not only the responsibility of the purchase department manager or production department manager. सिर्फ lower level management is not responsible for these variation. Now we are saying that if this variation is arising, both strategic level manager is responsible as well as the line management is responsible. दोनों की responsibility है. Now what is happening? You are studying it more in detail. Who is responsible for what? How much the mistake of top level management? How much is the mistake of lower level management? See, it is more in detail. We are trying to find out who is actually responsible for what type of variation. कुछ गलती top level management की भी हो सकती है. हर चीज के लिए हम lower level management को responsible नहीं करेंगे. Right? We will not make the responsibility of lower level management for everything. Right? So there are some things for which the top level management is responsible, and we will find the fault of the top level management also. We will not put all the responsibility to the lower level management. Okay? So this is the formula for traditional variations. Now let's see how we can find the traditional variations also. Huh? So in the question, they're asking you to find the labor. देखो अब क्या हो गया, material नहीं है. What is it? Labor का variations find कर. Right? So labor efficiency variations, labor rate variations. So now here we are finding the labor. Chalo, let's do it. Okay? It is not for the material, it is for the labor. Okay, very nice. You know the formula now, right? I need some space to solve it. Okay. Give me 1 minute. Let me do one thing. Let me minimize it. I need space to solve it. So what do we have to do? We have to find out the traditional efficiency variation, traditional rate variations. So I'm finding traditional variation, traditional rate variations. So what will be the traditional rate variation? We will see what was the original rate of the labor, right? Original minus actual will be traditional variation. So what was the original rate which we were paying to the labor? Then what is the actual rate we are paying? Into actual hour. Into what? Actual hour. This will give you traditional rate variation. Now let's see how we can calculate traditional usage variation or efficiency variation. Traditional usage variation. How we can find it? So consider the original hours for the production minus actual hours into standard price, original standard price. Right? This will be what? See, I have only considered everywhere I am only considering these two things. Traditional variation is actually original budget minus the actual budget. So you can see when I was calculating the rate variation, original rate, I considered the original rate, then the actual rate, I consider the actual rate. And when I was considering the efficiency variance, then I consider what? Original hours, then actual hours. I consider the original hours and the actual hours because the sum of these two will be traditional variation. This is your traditional variation. Right? This is your traditional variation. The sum of planning and operational variation is traditional variation. Now you can see what was the original rate. 10 rupees was the original rate. What was the actual rate? Actual rate was 8.5. And what is the actual hour? 1200 hour was the actual hour. Put it here. Original rate is rupees. Original budgeted rate, right? Original budgeted rate was rupees 10. Actual rate was 8.5. And the actual hour will be 1200. Right? Just solve it. You will get the answer. Similarly, original hour for actual output. Original hour was this. 1100 unit into 1. Sorry. So this will be 1100 hour. This was your original hours. Okay. And then original hour. Then see what is the actual hour here in the question. See the actual hour. So I can see the actual hour as you can see 1200 hours. 1200 hour is the actual hour. Consider it. Solve it. And what is the original standard price? I can see the original standard price as rupees 10. This is my original standard price. Right? This is my original standard price. I will consider it. Rupees 10. Now solve it. Let's use the calculator and solve it. 10 minus 8.5 is 1.5 into 1200. This will be giving you 1800. It's a favorable variation. 1800, a favorable variation. And the next one is what? 1100 minus 1200 into 10. 1000. Adverse variation. Just add them, you will get your total traditional variations. All right. So you can see 1000 and 1800 is coming, right? So traditional efficiency variation, when you were calculating, efficiency variation 1000 and the rate variation 1800. Clear? Right? Okay. And now with the same information, you can calculate the planning variation as well as you can calculate the planning variation and you can calculate what? Operational variation. We can calculate it. I want all of you to try it. It is very simple topic. बहुत आसान है. Very, very simple topic. Right? Okay. So now what do we have to do? Planning variations. Where in case of usage variations and in case of rate variations. So usage is efficiency variation. क्योंकि लेबर के लिए efficiency use होती है. Efficiency variations. What is the planning efficiency variations? Planning efficiency variation is what? Original, always remember, original budgeted hour minus revised budgeted hour. So original budgeted hour minus revised budgeted hour. Right into original budgeted standard price. Standard rate. Right, consider this formula, find the efficiency variation. Similarly, what is the formula for rate variation? Planning rate variation. See how we will write the formula. We will consider here what? Original budgeted standard rate minus revised budgeted standard rate. Rate variation find kar rahe na. So we will consider original budgeted standard rate minus actual budgeted standard rate into what? Original budgeted hour. Revised budgeted hour, sorry. Right? Just put all these information, you will get the answer. So what is the original budgeted hour? You can see this was my original budgeted hour, 1100 hour. What was my revised budgeted hour? You can see if I multiply them, I'll get revised budgeted hour. 1100 into 0.8 is my revised budgeted hour. What is my original budgeted rate? Rupees 10. Okay. Similarly here, what was my original rate minus revised rate? So original rate was rupees 10. Revised rate was my rupees 10. Same as 0. So this will be coming as 0. Revised budgeted hour is what? Whatever. 1100 into 0.8. But this is coming 0. This will come 0. Why? Because 10 minus 10 is 0. Right? And this one you can calculate. Efficiency variation. Rate variation is coming as 0. Efficiency variation you can see. 1100 minus into 0.8 220. Okay. 2200. Right. This is my favorable variations. All right. So you can see here what I can conclude, because they are asking you to comment also. I can conclude there is no fault in planning. There is no fault in planning because the rate variation is coming as 0. That means there is no fault in planning of the rate. And in case of efficiency, there is no fault in planning. Instead, it is an efficient variation. Okay? So management is going good here in case of planning variation of efficiency and rate variation. Management is going good. The strategic level management is doing well. Okay? There is no variation in rate. It is good. And in case of efficiency variation also, it is a favorable variation. They have set higher standard than what actually happening. So you can see there is no problem in planning variation. I have made this conclusion also. Now the point is that what about the operational variations? So the point is related to what? Operational variations. So what is operational variation? Revised budget minus actual budget. Right? Revised budget minus actual budget. Operational variation. So now the point is that if you're finding operational variation as rate variation, efficiency variation, same. Okay? We will find the efficiency variation and the rate variation. So rate ke liye what we will do? We will not see these value now. Instead of these value, we will see what was the revised budgeted standard rate minus actual rate. We will consider these two things. Now, so what was the revised rate 10 rupees. What was the actual rate? 8.5. You will consider these values. So we will be considering rupees 10 was the revised rate. Actual rate is rupees 8.5. Okay. Into the revised budgeted hour, which is what? Revised budgeted hour is this. Right, into revised budgeted hour, just consider it, you will solve it, you will get the answer. Okay. 10 minus 8.5 is this into 0.8. You can see it's a favorable variation. Right? Okay, so in this way, you can calculate the rate variation. Now let's see operational variation, efficiency variation. Operational efficiency variation, how we can calculate. Operational, what? Efficiency. So for efficiency variation, we have to check revised budgeted hour minus actual hour. We will see hours now. So what was your revised budgeted hour? Revised budgeted hour was this, 1100 into 0.8. This was my revised budgeted hour. Then what was my actual hour? 1200. You can see here 1200 is my actual hour. So 1200 hour. Okay. Into what? Into the revised budgeted rate. 10. Solve it, you will get the answer. And if you have any doubt, please ask me your doubt. This is unfavorable. Right. So in this way, you can see how easy it is to calculate the planning variation, how easy it is to calculate the operational variation. You know, if the planning variation is coming adverse, the strategic level managers are responsible. If the operational level variation is adverse, then the operational level manager is responsible. So this is how we will solve these questions, right? And this is how you can comment on it, right? They're very, very, very simple, very simple. Kuch bhi nahi hai, right? They're very simple questions. You just need practice, a little bit practice here. That's it. And you can see the conclusion also. Let me read the comment for you. In this case, what is happening? The separation of labor cost variance into operational and planning variation. आप क्या कर रहे हो? Total variation को, traditional variation को, labor cost variation को, you are classifying it into planning variation and operational variation. क्यों? ताकि स्ट्रेटेजिक लेवल पे क्या गलती की है वो फाइंड कर सके, ऑपरेशनल लेवल पे क्या गलती की है वो फाइंड कर सके. आपने देखा प्लानिंग लेवल पे कोई गलती नहीं हो रही, इसका मतलब जो भी गलती हो रही है वो ऑपरेशनल लेवल पे हो रही है अगर ये अनफेवरेबल आ रहा है. ठीक है. सो shows a large problem in the area of labor efficiency that might otherwise have been indicated. Operational variance are based on revised whatever. So I can tell you, I have already tell you that who is responsible for what. You can find it very easily. All right. Okay. You can see these are very simple questions, but your base should be clear. I mean, the basic formula should be clear. Achha, after this, I can help you one thing, because you can see this is all related to variations, right? We will take a break and then we will start again. You can see after this, the variation is about activity-based costing. Then you will see it will come about the labor and all. Huh? So we will see it will be coming as learning curve ke liye bhi variation. So it is all, you can see these are not the basic variation. This is all advanced level variation. So we will do it after the break. Let's take a break and then we will continue. So let's come back to the session. So we have learned about the planning and operational variation, and you have studied that the traditional variation, which we have already studied in our CA inter, we have just continued those traditional variation. But what is happening here? We are studying now those traditional variation more in detail, है ना? और ज़्यादा घुस के देख रहे हैं who is responsible for what. Sometimes it is not all the responsibility of the line level managers. Sometimes the senior level management are responsible for something. We need to find out who is responsible for what. Accordingly, we will blame them, or accordingly, we will see, okay, there is scope of improvement at this place, right? So accordingly, we can find the place or scope of improvement. Accordingly, we can find it, right? So this is about studying the traditional variations, studying the planning variation and operational variations. Now, what I believe that I don't know whether how much you know about, how much you remember. I don't know whether you remember it or you forgot it or what happened. See, so the point is that I know it's not relevant what I'm teaching now, but what I believe that it is important. So I'm just quickly revising all the variations, right? All the variations I'm just quickly revising, because you can see here now we are studying all those variations which we have already studied more in detail. So some very important variation, I'm just quickly revising them. Okay, and then we will study about the other variations. So we have enough time. We have 2 more sessions on standard costing. So we can cover everything, and even we can revise the basic thing. Point is that just remember, it is not means in final level, they will not ask you the question of CA inter. But CA inter is important to understand the CA final and to solve the question, because you can see we are using all the formula which we have studied in CA inter. So I'm just quickly revising everything for you, the things which you have already studied in CA inter. Okay, so as I told you that we study the variations in both the places. We study the variation on cost and we study the variation in revenue. We study the variation for both. So we will see the cost and we will see the revenue or the same. Okay. And the cost is further divided into direct material cost, right? It will be a direct labor cost. It will be variable overheads, and it will be fixed overhead. We will study the variation of all these things. Sales ke liye we will see the quantity and the price at which we are selling. Sometimes instead of price, we consider the contribution also. You will see in the book, you will see the formula. Somewhere they are using the price, somewhere they are using the contribution. Both is correct, right? Somewhere we consider the price variance, sometimes we just consider the contribution variations, right? So the point is that we find the variation for everything. Let's start with the material variations. So material cost variation. So what happened, you can see these are all the resources which we use for the production of final good. क्या है ये सब? Resource है ना? We use it for the production of final good. ठीक है? तो direct material के लिए we calculate the material cost variation. You can see we study it in detail, क्योंकि कोई भी final good के अंदर सबसे ज़्यादा cost material की होती है. Like if I have this pen, so most of the cost in this pen is because of the material. सबसे ज़्यादा cost either material or labor. Okay, then variable overhead and fixed overhead, but most of the cost is the material cost. For that reason, we need to study this material variation more in detail, right? So if you will see in material cost variation, we have material quantity variations and material price variation. Now, this quantity variation is also known as usage variations or volume variation. So you will see in your book somewhere they are using the material quantity variation, somewhere they are using material usage variance, somewhere they are using material volume variation. So in this way, they're using different terms for the material, right? You will see in your book, they will be using different terms for the material. All right. So material cost variation. So now what is the formula for all these things? I'm just explaining you all these things because I don't know how much you remember, but it will come here in somewhere in planning and planning and operational variation. These variation will come. For that reason, I'm covering it so that it will be easy for you to cover it, right? So first is what, ma'am, what is this quantity variation? Quantity variation is what? Standard quantity minus actual quantity into standard price. This is a what? Material quantity variation. Acha. Then ma'am, what is this material price variation? So this is what? Standard price of the raw material, then actual price of the raw material, then how much actual quantity you have consumed, right? If you add these two values, it will give you material cost variations. If you add them, you will get material cost variation. So what will happen? Just solve it. You will find that two values are common. This value and this. When you multiply it here now, standard price into actual quantity. Standard price into actual quantity. So you will find that these two things are common. You can just cancel them, right? This one will cancel this one, right? What will you get? Material cost variations ke case mein, what will you get? Standard quantity into standard price minus actual quantity into actual price. This will give you what? Material cost variations, right? And now you can see this is all traditional variation. This is all you have studied in traditional variation. इसी को you can further classify it as in planning variation and operational variation. तो जब भी वो planning variation पूछेगा, इन्हीं सब के लिए you can find the planning variation. What do you have to consider? Budgeted standard quantity. Give me 1 minute. So when they will ask you in planning variation traditional ka isi ko hi they will ask you more in detail. What do you have to do? Material quantity variation hai, isi ko hi you have to classify into two form. One should be planning variation, one should be operational variation. Let me try to help you here also. We can solve it further into planning and operational variation. So how is it possible? Let me give me 1 minute. I'll just try to help you. So the same thing can be further divided into planning variation and operational variation. Okay, और detail में पढ़ रहा है और detail में they want to know who is responsible for what. So planning variation, we will see what is the actual budget of what? Standard quantity. What is the actual budget of the quantity? Then what is the revised budget of the quantity? The revised budget of the quantity, right? Actual budget of the quantity minus revised budget of the quantity into standard price, right? Into standard price. Similarly, for this is what? This is for quantity variation. Similarly, for operational variation, what will you do? You will write it in this way. Revised budget of quantity minus actual quantity into standard price. So you can see the same formula. I have just same formula I'm using here, but here I'm just classifying them into planning and operational variation. The same formula. Standard quantity minus actual quantity into standard price was your quantity variation. Now the quantity variation is further divided into planning variation and operational variation. So for planning variation, actual budgeted quantity minus revised budgeted quantity into standard price, and for operational variation, revised budgeted quantity minus actual quantity into standard price will be operational variation. So same quantity variation ko you have further classified into two forms, planning variation and operational variation, because we know that we will study this variation more in detail now. So you have just classified it more in detail, right? Similarly, if they will ask you to find out the price variation, the price variation could be, you can further classify it into two forms. You can further classify it into planning variation, and you can further classify them into operational. Right? So for planning variation, what you can do, you can consider the budgeted, you can consider the stand. Just give me 1 minute. We will consider the actual, budgeted. Just remember, actual, budgeted, revised, budgeted. Budgeted. This is my planning variation. And operational is what? Revised, budgeted minus actual. This is my operational variation. Up here we are talking about the price which we are paying for procuring the raw material. So देखो, actual budgeted price of the raw material minus revised budgeted price of the raw material. This will give me what? Planning variation into actual quantity. Into not actual quantity, revise actual quantity. Okay. So you can see how easy it is for you to remember the formula now. Then revise budgeted price minus actual price into the actual quantity. So in this way, you can remember the formula also, right? You can see that we are just classifying the main formula into further. And you can see how easy it is for you to solve it in the exam if it will come in exam. Okay, so that was about the material cost variation. You can do the same thing for the rate variations. Let's consider the rate variation. So what we are studying, labor cost variations. Traditionally, what was the formula? Labor cost variation. We are studying about the labor cost variation that can be further classified as labor efficiency variation, or labor efficiency variation, or labor rate variation. Then you can classify it in this way. You know the formula of labor efficiency variation. What is the traditional formula of labor efficiency variation? You know the formula, right? What was the formula? Standard hour minus actual hour into standard rate. This was the formula. Similarly, rate variation के लिए standard rate. For rate variation, we know the formula. What is the formula? Standard rate minus actual rate into actual hour worked. This is the formula for efficiency variation and rate variation. Basic, traditional formula. अब इसी को ही we will study more in detail and we will classify them as planning variation and operational variation. We will classify them more in detail. So how we will do it? More in detail, how we will fix it? So planning variation ka you know. What is planning variation? We know it is the original budget minus what? Revised budget. Original budget minus revised budget. And operational variation, you know that revised budget and actual budget. You know this, right? Similarly, yahan pe bhi, you will find it more in detail by considering the planning and operational variation. Planning and operational variation. Planning mein what will you consider? Original budget and revised budget. And operation mein you will study revised budget and actual budget. Right? Okay, now what will happen here? We will see, देखो ये planning variation है but किसका? Efficiency variation. So standard rate minus actual rate. So original budgeted standard hours, original budgeted hours minus revised budgeted hours is this planning variation. Similarly, here what will happen? Revised budgeted hour minus actual hours. Operational variation, na? It is not a budget. Actual hours. Into standard rate, revised, standard rate, revised, standard rate, revise, standard rate. And here what will happen? Revise standard rate. And original rate hold. Okay. And here what will happen when you're finding the rate variation, you will consider budgeted, revised budgeted, actual budget minus revised budget. No? Just give me original budget minus revised budget. So original budget rate minus revised budget rate into actual hour. Similarly, here what will happen? Revised budget rate minus actual rate into actual hour. So you can see the same formula we are using to find out more in detail operational and planning variations. Okay. You can see it's so easy to remember now, right? Pehle basic formula likho and then further classified it into original and revise and actual. That's it. And you will get your formulas, right? And you will see, like in most of the cases, they're just asking you about the material variations or the labor variation. That's it. Huh? Most of the cases, they will only ask you about the material variations and the labor variations. All right. Okay. So these are the topic we have here. And this is what same variation, traditional variation humne padha tha, but more in detail, huh? Where we are further classifying the same traditional variation into what operational variation and what we are classifying them further into operational variation and planning variation so that we can exactly identify kitni galti kiski, who is responsible to what extent. How? So we can easily identify the responsibility of the people and accordingly we can see the scope of improvement. Simple, right? Simple. Okay. Now we have the option, we can take more question or we can take the other concepts. I believe we have time. We have 2 more sessions, so we can take the concept in next session. No? I can take these concepts in next session. Let's take more questions on the same topic because this is the most important topic which we have just studied. So let's take more question on the planning and efficiency variations. I'll give you the question and I expect all of you to solve it. So we will solve the question of planning and operational variations now. Okay, let's take this question. So this was a question from your mock test paper. Let's take this question. It's this one. Okay, read this question and let's try to solve this question. Read this question. We will try to solve this question. Okay, read this question, then we will try to solve it. What is the question here? They're asking you to calculate. What they're asking you to find? Calculate material variance, material cost variance. By how? Traditional variance. Traditional का मतलब है जो आप ट्रेडिशनली फाइंड करते थे. What material cost variation फाइंड करते थे. Material quantity variation you have calculated, material price variation you have calculated. These are what traditional variations, right? But traditional variation ko bhi further you have to classify it into planning variation and operational variation. You have to classify it further into planning and operational variations. All right, okay. So in the question, they're asking you to find out the traditional variances analysis and an approach which help you to find out the planning and operational variation. ये करना है. चलो ठीक है. I expect all of you to try this question at your own. Are you trying? Very simple. Okay, I don't want to take a new topic for a reason. We have more sessions. We can cover more concept in other sessions. Let's practice some questions from this topic. All right. Okay. Take your time. Take 2 minutes to read it and try to solve it. Then I'll help you. Take your time to read it. Take your time to read it. Yes. Shall I help you? Okay. Let me see if you have any doubt or something. Okay. So let me help you to read and solve this question. First, read it carefully, extract the information which is required by you to solve it, right? Read it carefully and extract the information which is important to solve the question. Read it. Okay. Yes, read it and extract the information which is required to solve the question, right? Okay, so let's read it. Let's read the question together. Okay. So what is the question? The managing director of The managing director of Petro KL Limited, a company, thinks standard costing has little to offer in reporting of material variances due to frequently changes in price. अब देखो frequently price change हो रहा है. It means external environment is responsible. External environment का मतलब है it is not just the responsibility of internal management. Internal management क्या कर सकता है? अगर market change हो रही है, कोविड आ गया, उसकी वजह से कुछ हो गया, तो इट इज बियॉन्ड द कंट्रोल ऑफ इंटरनल मैनेजमेंट, राइट? उसको नहीं रिस्पॉन्सिबल कर सकते. सो हियर मैनेजिंग डायरेक्टर इज सेइंग देयर इज लिटिल ऑफर. रिपोर्ट मटेरियल वेरिएंस का कोई फायदा नहीं है, क्योंकि ज्यादातर क्या हो रहा है, जो चेंजेस हो रहे हैं वो बाहर एक्सटर्नल इन्वायरमेंट की वजह से हो रहे हैं, राइट? मोस्ट ऑफ द चेंजेस इज हैपनिंग हियर बिकॉज ऑफ द एक्सटर्नल इन्वायरमेंट, राइट? बाहर की चीजें चेंज हो रही है, तो ऑब्वियसली operational level manager is not responsible, but planning level manager may be responsible. Planning ढंग से करो ना, strategic level manager should make a proper planning for it, right? So the planning level manager is responsible for this variation actually. Okay. What else? The frequently change in price of the material, PTKLL, can utilize one of two equally suitable raw material and always plan to utilize the raw material which will lead to cheapest total production cost. So what is happening here? This company can utilize one of two equally suitable raw material and they have the option to, select the raw material. दोनों ठीक है, दोनों में से कोई भी यूज कर सकते हो. They have the option to select the raw material. Okay. However, PTKLL is frequently trapped by price changes and material actually used often provides after the event to have been more expensive than the alternative which was originally rejected. During last accounting period, to produce a unit of PTKLL could use either 2.5 kg of PG. So they have the option, either they can use PG material. How much? 2.5 kg. Or they have the option, they can use a material PD. How much? They have the option, they can use 2.5 kg of PD, right? I told you that the company have two options. They can buy any of the two material, either PG or PD. Now, PTKLL plan to use PG as it appears to be cheaper. दिख रहा है, ये सस्ता है. So they want to use this material because according to them, it is a cheap material. So according to them, it's a cheap material. They are planning to use this material. All right. PG, it appears to be cheaper of the two. And the plans were based on the cost of PG of rupees. And what is the cost of this material? Rupees 1.5 per kg. This is the cost of this material. Due to market movement, the actual price change. But क्या हो रहा है? This price will change. Because the market is changing, right? This will change. And if PTKLL had purchased efficiently, the cost would have been appear. What? This will be the cost. This is how the price will change, right? Okay. What else we have? Production of P was 1000 unit. Final good. How many final goods they are producing? They are producing 1000 unit of final good. Okay. And usage of PG amount is 27,000 to the actual cost of this. Now, actual quantity consumed is given, right? How to solve it, ma'am? It looks quite difficult to solve it, huh? Chalo, let's try to see how we can solve it. The company is planning to use PG. Which material? The company is planning to use PG material. All right, I'm just making some space to solve the question. Whenever you will get the question like this and they're asking you to find out the planning and operational variation, just make a table. The table will help you to solve it easily. I'll tell you that how you can prepare the table. Okay. Make a table. The table will help you to solve it very easily. Okay, table. Let's make a table. If the company uses PG material and if the company uses PD material. Right? So the point is that PG के लिए, what was the original budget? What was the original budget, right? What was the original budget? Then what was the revised budget? Right? What was the original budget? What was the revised budget? And what is the actual scenario? Okay. You can see actually how many quantity of raw material they are using. 27,000 kg actual quantity of raw material is this, into actual price is what? Actual price is rupees. Don't know what? Don't know the actual price, not given. But the total price is given. Total is what? 6480 rupees. So I can find the per unit price because we know the quantity. Huh? So just divide it, get the price first. So it is what? 6480 divided by 2700. This is coming as 2.4. This is coming as what? Rupees 2.4. Right? Rupees 2.4 is coming here. All right. Okay. This is what? Actual scenario. This is the actual scenario. Okay. Then now let's see what the revised budget and the original budget for this product. So we can see here what was the original budget. So originally, how many units do we have here? PG. Original budget was set as 2.5 kg per unit. Right? And how many units they have promised to produce? 1,000 final good. Right? 1,000 units they are planning to produce, right? If you multiply them, you will get original budget cost. That will be around rupees 2,500. This will be original budget cost. Now, what is revised budget cost here? Revised budget cost is what? You will see what is the revised budget of this product, right? It will be around, I think, all right. Give me 1 minute. Try to solve it and just give me 1 minute. Yes. I hope you have tried the question. Oh, very nice. Janvi has already calculated. Very nice. Okay. So we will see the original budget. You can see it's easy, right? It's very easy. So you can see the original budget, you can see the revised budget, you can see the actual scenario. And by considering them all, you can easily find what the operational variations, and you can easily calculate the planning variations very easily, right? And the operational variation will be control variation. Somewhere they are using the word control variation, uncontrolled variation. Keep it in mind. operational level operational variation is a control variation because you can control it, right? Internal management can control it. But planning variation is uncontrollable variation. You cannot control those variations, right? So in this way, you will see the variations, the control and uncontrolled variations, right? Okay. So here, if they will ask me, what is the planning variation? What is the operational variation? I can easily use the information now. See, if you will make the table in this way, the way I have created the table here, it will be very easy for you to solve it, right? So you can see from here, I can see this will give me the planning variation, right? This will give me the planning variation. And from here, I can get the operational variation, right? Operational variations, right? So first one will give me the planning variation and the second one will give me the operational variations. We will see the information and we will solve the question accordingly, right? So planning variation ke liye, you will find the planning rate variation and you can find the planning the rate variation and the quantity variation. I told you that we can calculate both. Let's calculate it. So what do we have to do? First, let's do one thing. Let's find the planning. First, let's find the planning quantity variation. So what will you consider? The original budgeted quantity, right? Minus actual budgeted quantity. Acha, quantity we check. Is it the same quantity? How much quantity is required for the production of final goods? Is it mentioned somewhere? It's mentioned. 2.5 kg will be required. Okay. So this is the quantity. Now, what is the price then? We will see the quantity and the price and then we will solve it, right? So it is mentioned that the price will be 1.5. You can see here. The price is given 1.5. So we will see this is what a revised price actually. This is what revised price. So rupees 1.5 per kg, right? And the quantity is what? 2.5 kg of quantity is required, right? This is what quantity. Price is what? What will be the price here? This is quantity. What will be the price here? 2.5. Right? So 2.5 kg is required for 1 unit. We are producing 1000 unit final good. Itna hai, right? So for 1000 final good, how much input of raw material is required at what price you can buy it? Original budget was for this. And then because of price fluctuation, maybe there is need to revise the budget. So from 2.25, 0.15 will be the revised budget. And then we will see how much the quantity, actual quantity is this, actual price is this. I can't see any difference in the revised quantity. You will see what is the revised quantity here. Okay, we will see what is the revised quantity in the question. I can't see any quantity mentioned anywhere. Okay, so it is not mentioned, so I will assume it will be 2.5 kg only. because a revised quantity is not mentioned anywhere in the question. You can read the question, read it carefully and tell me, is it mentioned revised standard quantity for the production of final good? Is it mentioned somewhere? Please read the question and tell me. Read it. Tell me, revised standard quantity, is it mentioned somewhere? Revised standard quantity. Is it mentioned? Actual quantity and okay. So revised and actual quantity is not mentioned, right? Okay. So the point is that you will see here that actual quantity okay, that's it. It's not given, right? Okay, I can see, you can read the question, you can check, it is the same, right? Original quantity consumed and the revised quantity required, both are same. Original quantity consumed and the revised quantity required is same, right? Okay, now let's find out the planning quantity variation and planning price variations. We will calculate both, right? With this information, we will find both planning quantity variation and planning price variation. What? Planning price variation. Then we will find what? Operational quantity variation. Operational, right? Quantity variation, right? And we will find the second one, we will find operational price variations. Keep it in mind, operational variation are controllable variation, because you will see in the answer they have given you controllable variation, uncontrollable variation. This is controllable. You can control it, but planning variation is uncontrollable. You cannot control it. It is beyond control of the management, right? Okay, so now let's see what is the price variations. You can see what is the revised, what is the formula for operational variation? Revised budget minus actual budget. This is the formula. So see what is the revised price and what is the actual price. Rupees 1.5 minus rupees 2.4, right? Into actual quantity sold. Right? Solve it, you will get the answer. Okay. Similarly, if you want to find out the planning price variation, you will see what was planning price variation. What was the original price minus what was the revised budgeted price into what is the actual quantity, revised budgeted quantity they are selling. Right? See, solve it and tell me what is the answer coming here. Solve this and tell me what is the answer coming here quickly. Solve this and quickly tell me what is the answer coming. Do we have any other information in the question? Can you just check it? Okay. So if you will see, you will get the information here. Okay. So we will solve this question and we can get the we can calculate the planning quantity variation and operational variation. Now, if we want to find out the quantity variation, what do we have to consider? We have to consider the standard quantity. We have to consider what the original budgeted quantity minus we have to consider actual, sorry, revised budgeted quantity. So this is how we will solve it. This is how we will solve it. Uh,
अशोक जी, फिर डिस्कनेक्ट हो गया ना। रुको, मैं मैम से बात करता हूँ।
Okay, so the point is that there is some problem. Let me quickly resolve it. So the point is that when I was reading the question, I considered this value in, see, this is not price actually, this is the quantity. I considered this value. So the point is that, let's see this point about this and this point, right? Let's read it carefully. What information do we have about these 2 points? Okay, so what is actually the revised budgeted quantity and what is actually the original budget? We have to check what is the original budget and what is the revised budget. All right. Okay, so we have this information and we have this information. Out of this, which one is the original budget and which one is the revised budget? Let's try to understand this. So PTKLL plan to use PG as it appear it would be cheaper of the two. मतलब ये जो मटेरियल है it is cheaper of the two and the plan were based on a cost. So this is their original budget. Originally they were planning कि they will get this product at a very cheaper price, right? So this was their original price, that was rupees 1.5 was their original price. Then what happened? Due to market movement, the actual price changes, and if PTKL had purchased efficiently, the cost would have been, ab dekho, because the market is changing, the price is changing to this. So this will be the revised price. Rupees 2.25 will be the revised price. This will be the actual price. This will be the revised price, and accordingly we will do the calculation. So what will be the actual price and what will be the revised price, we will see. So you can see here the original price was 1.5. The original price was 1.5 and due to change in market the revised price was 2.25. Market change हो रहा है उसके बाद the revised price was 2.25. So the revised price is 2.25. Revised price is 2.25, right? You will consider it, you will find the planning price variation. Similarly, revised price is 2.25 here. You will compare it with the actual price and then you can find the variations, right? So in this way, we will find the planning variations, planning price variation, and we will find the operational variation. So if you will see, you were saying that it is in the question, you can see the operational price variation is 2.25 minus 2.4, right? It is coming as this. And operational quantity variation is 2500 minus 2700 into 2.25, which is coming as this. So this is something which we have already calculated, right? 2500 minus 2700 into the price. The revised price was 2.25. 2.25, right? See, the point is that you should be careful when you are reading the question. If you will not read it, you will find the wrong figure, right? So you can see the point is that it is mentioned that the market price is revising, right? The market, there is change in the market and because of which the price is revising. This will be the revised price, right? The actual price was this and the actual amount which they were paying was this. Because of this, the price is coming here. The actual price which they end up paying is 2.4. All right, you can see there is a mistake of the planning, right? Planning, they had just planned to pay 1.5 instead of 1.5. They have seen that there is change in the market and the price in the market for the same product has changed to 2.25. But actually when they paid actually more, right? There is some problem in the planning and then there is some problem in the operational level. So planning level, this is uncontrollable, right? This is uncontrollable. This is something you can control, right? So if you will see here, they have calculated the control variations and uncontrolled variations also. If you will see here, they have calculated the controllable variations and uncontrollable variations. Now, what is controllable variations? Controllable variation which is within the control of the management, right? So this will be operational variations, right? And this will be operational variations. And what is uncontrollable variation means? What is uncontrollable variation? This is what? This is what? This is operational variation and this is what? Planning variation. So you can see they have actually, this was their budget. Then they have the revised budget, right? And then they have the revised budget. Then what happened? Operational means the revised budget and what they are paying. Acha, now what is this 2 rupees here, ma'am? Okay, control and uncontrollable variations. Now the point is that this change in price of the material can be controlled by, because they have the option to buy 2 material. Same kind of 2 type of raw material, matlab same similar type of material is available in the market. So the point is that abhi dekho, ye control and uncontrollable variation kiske liye find kar raha hai? It is, they are finding this controllable and uncontrollable variation from the point of view of planning variation. Abhi humne bola there is a problem. Just give me 1 minute. We have just discussed a problem here that initially the original budget they have set, as rupees 1.5. This was the budget they have set. Okay. Then what happened? They were saying कि market में कुछ change हुआ, right? There is some change in the market. Okay. So because of which the price has changed to rupees, how much? 2.25. Right? This is a problem in planning, right? You can see here, this is a problem in planning, right? And then what is happening? Then they end up paying how much? Rupees 2.4. Okay, सब कुछ planning, सब कुछ variations, whatever the variation it is arising here because of the price. So they are focusing more on price, right? So they can say that there is problem in planning. Now they have observed that they have 2 options. In this question, you can see this company have 2 options. The company can either purchase PG or they can purchase PD. Same raw material, but different price. And you can use them alternatively for the production of final good. So what happened? They have seen that there is drastic increase in price. The price is actually increasing drastically. So when the price is increasing drastically, what they can do? Is it possible for the strategic level manager to control it? Generally, this type of things is beyond control. This is beyond control. I told you that generally the planning variation which came is uncontrollable. I told you this is uncontrollable. Generally, this is, agar market mein kuch change ho raha hai, you cannot control it, right? COVID aa gaya, inflation ho gaya, it is not within the control of the management, strategic level management, it is not within the control, right? Generally, this is uncontrollable. But here what is happening, the planning level management or the strategic level management have the option to control it. Generally, it is uncontrolled, but yahan pe control karna possible hai. How is it possible to control it? But instead of buying the same product, buy the alternate now. Why are you buying PG when you know that the price of the PG is drastically increasing? When you know that the price of PG is drastically increasing, why are you buying PG? Why don't instead of PG buy PD now? Same material hai, same kaam ho raha hai, same production karke dega. So why are you buying PG? Why don't you buy the PD? There is no difference in raw material. It is mentioned in the question that these 2 raw material can be used alternatively, right? The company have option to use 2 raw material and they have alternate, these material are alternate of each other. So when you know that the price of PG is increasing drastically, why are you using PG now? Then control it by, instead of PG, use other raw material. Use what? Use PD. If you will use PD, if the senior level management, instead of PG, the senior level management will use PD. देखो, strategic level management में जो error, जो fault होता है, it is beyond control. It is uncontrollable. But right now, here it is so visible that strategic level manager can control this planning variations. थोड़ा control हो सकता है. How much it can be controlled? See, the price is increasing from 1.5 to 2. ठीक है, ₹2. This is beyond control, uncontrolled. ठीक है, but ये जो price rise है from 1.5 to 2.5, मतलब from 2 to 2.5, you can control it now. How you can control? You can avoid paying this high amount. This high payment can be avoided. Maximum, instead of 1.5, we can end up paying 2 rupees by buying the alternate raw material. Don't buy this raw material. Instead of buying this raw material, buy an alternate raw material. Management, strategic level management have this option, right? So when the strategic level management have this option, they should adopt it, right? So this is what a strategy, right? If you don't have, if the raw material required is very expensive, buy the alternate raw material. Now, if the use is same, the quality of the final product will remain the same. Why are you buying expensive raw material then? Buy the same raw material, no? So the point is that instead of this, we will suggest them that instead of going for PG, right, you can see the price is actually drastically increasing from 1.5 to 2.25 is drastic increase in price. So instead of this, why are you buying PG? Why PD? When you buy the PD, what will happen? The price will still rise. You can see from 1.5 to 2, the price is still rising, which is beyond control. This is uncontrolled, right? This is beyond the control of the company. But further rise from 2 to 2.5, this rise you can control by buying other product. So in this way, they have calculated the control, and further the price is also rising from here to here. From 2.5 to 2.4, the price is rising, but this is also controllable. So the point is that this variation is controllable, this variation is controllable, but the price rising from 1.5 to 2 is uncontrolled. It is not within the control of the company. This price rise is not within the control of the company. ये तो होगा ही होगा. ऑल्टरनेट यूज करने के बाद भी प्राइस इंक्रीज हो रहा है तो होगा ही होगा. यू कैन नॉट अवॉइड इट. द स्ट्रेटेजिक लेवल मैनेजर कैन नॉट अवॉइड इट. This is beyond control. But after that, whatever the price is rising is within the control, right? Like this was within the control of senior management or strategic level management from 2 to 2.5 was within the control of strategic level management. And this price rise is within the control of operational level management, right? I hope it is clear. Please write in comment quickly. Write in comment clear. Is it clear, Janvi? Yes. Is it clear? Don't just see the calculation. What I mean to say, it is so easy to calculate it. Aram se kar loge. Try to understand the logic. Logic is important because if you will see in the question, you have to write the explanation, you have to write the comment, you have to make the conclusion of the calculation, and you will get the marks for the conclusion, you will get the marks for the recommendation. They will ask you, recommend what we have to do. So the point is that just don't focus on the calculation, right? Just don't focus on calculation. Try to know the logic behind it, right? If they are calculating something, what is the logic of those calculations, right? What is the logic behind whatever you are doing? You must know the logic. All right. So accordingly, you can see here, they have calculated the control and uncontrolled variation. Actually, this is not operational level control they have calculated. They have calculated this control for the planning level management. Planning level, strategic level management ke liye, it is possible to control it, but it is not possible to control it. So they have further calculated at control and uncontrolled variations, right? Why they have done this calculation here and why they have not done the similar calculation anywhere other place, right? What is the reason, ma'am, why they are doing this calculation here, but we have not seen such calculation any other place? For a reason, right? Let me tell you the reason. Because in some question, they may ask you to recommend, right? Recommendation may ask, right? So generally what happens, generally we have only two type of variation. One is planning variation and one is operational variation. Right? And the point is that this is all can be controlled. The planning level variation can be controlled by good planning. If you do a good planning, it is possible to control it. Good planning. Now, in this question, they have given you an option of good plan. What good plan? Here, the strategic level management have the option to buy a cheaper product. Why are they buying the mehenga product, right? Buy a cheaper product. So here they have the option to buy it at cheaper price. So the price was actually, the price of raw material was 1.5. It has drastically, it will increase drastically from 1.5 to 2.25. but actually when you will go, it will increase to 2.4. But this price rise can be controlled by good planning. Instead of buying the same raw material, buy some other raw material, not cheaper raw material. Buy that raw material, and the price of that raw material was 2. So this price rise is beyond control of the strategic level management, but now you can see this can be controlled. So by good planning, strategic level management variation can be controlled. By good planning, operational level variation can be controlled. So everywhere planning is required, and for that reason we need to understand it more in detail so that we can identify who is responsible for what type of variation. मतलब total variation आ रहा था, पहले तो हमने पूरी responsibility production management को दे दी, पूरी responsibility purchase department को के manager को दे दी, but फिर हमें बाद में समझ आ रहा है, oh, it is not only the production manager who is responsible for the variation, or it is not the purchase manager who is responsible for variation. Now, only line management is not responsible for variation. Now we know, oh, the top level management, there are sometimes the top level management or strategic level management are responsible for variations. You can see now, because their strategic planning was not good, because of that the variation is arising, right? Sometimes the strategic level planning was not good, and because of that the variation was arising. So you have to check that whether the strategic level planning is good or not, right? We have to check the strategic level planning also for finding the variations, right? So it was really a good question, mind-blowing question, by the way. Must note the question ID. If you have the question ID, note the question ID and do it again. And just see, it is not about the calculation. This question is not about the calculation. Remember, all these questions are not about the calculation, right? It is all about logics. Why are they calculating the controllable variation? Why are they calculating the uncontrollable variation? It is all about the logics. Okay, now we have a similar question. You can do this question. We have 5 minutes. Let's do, because similar question, no? Let's see. Is it completely a same question? And whenever you are reading the question, be very careful. When you will be careful, then only you can read it properly. Otherwise, you will do some blunder. You will do some mistake, right? While reading the question, we can do some mistake. So when you are reading the question, be careful. Give me 1 minute. So this is a question. I want all of you to read it quickly. Yeah, it's in 1 page now. Okay. So let's read it quickly. And I just want to see that, is it the same question, similar question, or do we have something new in this question? We can solve this question in next session. So this question was in your examination question. Okay, GRB is a chemical processing company that produces sprays used by farmers to protect their crops. Okay, so it's a company of chemical processing company. One of these sprays, AgroFresh, is made by using either chemical A or chemical B. So one of the spray they are producing using ya to chemical A, ya to chemical B. Right? To produce 1 liter of AgroFresh spray, they have the option to use either 12 liter of chemical A or 12 liter of chemical B. They have the option. Okay, same kind of chemical is available to produce one final good. You have the option, you can use either A or you can use either B. Okay. During the financial year, the purchase department of GRV has a plan to use chemical B, as it appeared that it would be cheaper of the two, and the plan were based on the cost of chemical of rupees B. So B ka price kitna hai? What is the price of chemical B? It is rupees 15 per liter. Rupees 15 per liter. Due to subsequent market movement during the year, the actual price changed. And if देखो हुआ क्या है, मार्केट मूव हो रही है, because of the market movement the actual price market में change हुई है, right? And if it concern the department has purchased efficiently, the cost would be what? For chemical A is this, chemical B is this. So this was my original budget, right? कि मैं 15 रुपए में B को खरीद के ले आऊंगा. फिर क्या हुआ, ये चेंज हो गया. How much it has changed? Revised budget. B कैसा मिल रहा है? 15 की जगह rupees, you can buy it for 16, right? So instead of rupees 15, the same chemical B is available in the market for rupees 16. All right, then what is happening? The actual final good produced is 1000 and the chemical usage is given. If you divide them, you will get the actual price. So which is what? This is a similar question, by the way. 209920 divided by 12800, right? This is coming as 16.4. Actually, what we are paying 16.4. Yes. Right? Okay. So the point is that you can see this is about B. Here also this is about B and here also this is about B, right? If you want to find out the planning variation, you can use these values. You can find the planning variation. You can find the operational variation, operational price variation, planning price variation. But if you want to find out the controllable and uncontrollable variation, I told you operational variation is always controllable within the control of the management, internal management. अब यहाँ पे strategic level management have the option to control this price change. Price is changing from 15 to 16. Not good, right? This price change from 15 to 16 is not good for the company. And the strategic level management have option to change, to control this price change. How? They have the option to control this price change. How? By not buying the same B. B की जगह क्या करो? Don't buy B. Instead of B, buy A. So if the company, instead of B, if they buy A, same input, right? They can produce the final good from this and the price will be reducing from 16 to 15.4. So you can see this rise is not within the control of the strategic level management. Still, even if you will use the alternate product, okay, to reduce the cost of the product, right? Strategic level management बोल रहा है, चलो, let's use the alternate product. Instead of B, let's use A. A is now cheaper. Instead, when the company is using alternate product, you can see this is uncontrollable and this is controllable, right? This increase in price is controlled by using the alternate product. एक मिनट. This price increase, they can control it by using the alternate product. This price change, they cannot control it, right? This is beyond control of the company. Though they are buying the cheaper product, but still there is change in price, which is not within the control of the company. So you can see, right? This is beyond control of the company. And then you can find the controllable variations. You can find the uncontrollable variation here, controllable and uncontrollable for the strategic level management. Top level management, right? You can find the variation here for the top level management, the strategic level management. It is possible for them to control this price rise by using the alternate product. It is not possible for them to control this price. Even if they use the alternate product, it is not possible to control this price rise. No, I'm okay. So the point is that in this way we can calculate it. Is there any doubt do you have? Any doubt do you want to ask here? Yes, do you have any doubt here? Right, so you can see, I just want to quickly tell you about it. So you can see here, this increase in price they can control, right? This price, itna zyada drastic price increase, they can control it by using the alternate product, right? And this price rise, though they have used the alternate product, this is uncontrolled, right? Okay, controllable and uncontrollable. So you can see the logic everywhere. It is all so logical, right? कुछ भी बिना logic का नहीं है. Everything is so logical for us. All right. So if you people have any doubt, please ask your doubt. Otherwise, I'll be winding up the session. Right? We can take some more question in next session, and we will take some questions. We will take more concepts, right? So with this, let me wind up the session. If you have any doubt, please ask your doubt. Yes. Do you have any doubt? No doubt. Do you want to ask something? Is it clear? Okay. I believe it is all clear. So let me wind up the session. Take care, all of you. Bye.